What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here. This is the solo hardcore group Iron Team Size 4. So let's just dive right into some of the topics. So since the last video, I actually like right after the recording, I ended up um, stumbling upon some bit of luck there with one of my attempts to start completing combat achievements of the hard tier on the last remaining two that need to, the last remaining two accounts. And in the process of doing that, one of the bosses I was doing was Cerb, and I already have two primordial boots because I got two primordial crystals, which means that I can effectively, have that best in slot boot for Slayer on two accounts. That's typically why I would always just slay on two accounts. Plus, I've sort of figured out that it's a little bit too, you know, much of a hassle to do Slayer on all four of them, or even more than just one or two. In the instance where I get like a very click intensive task like Dust Devils or Necryls, where you constantly have to equip the darts and then aggro them all and then restack them by running back and forth. It just, if you ever get like another task that requires a lot of attention, then that just becomes a nightmare. So I tried to keep it down to only two, and now that two of the accounts are the only ones that need to do any Slayer remaining, that it just works out because I have again two primordials. But I ended up sniping a third primordial crystal. So I was doing the 150 Cerberus kill count combat achievement because that would have been the last one for Cerberus for the account. And in doing that, my trip, I was probably at like 147 KC when I got there, and typically I get about 7 or 8 kills at least per trip. So I got 150, and I'm like, you know what? I may as well just like finish the trip because the run there is so long, and you know, I honestly didn't even expect to snipe anything, and then literally, I think I was like 30 HP out of prayer, but the boss was like literally one hittable, and I know that he can only hit like 23s max. So I was just watching out if he would ever do some type of like triple attack or combo attack, or obviously summon any more ghosts, but I believe he had just summoned ghosts. So I was like, literally, this is my last kill. I'm just going to try to poke him for the remaining damage. I was out of supplies and pick up the loot and literally just telly instantly. And I literally sniped a primordial crystal right as that happened. And just a little bit earlier, I got an eternal crystal. So that's my fourth eternal crystal. So I'm officially made all four of my infinity boots into eternal boots just to have. I don't think I'll be using them in too many places, especially all at once. So I could have always just shared the ones I did have, but it's just nice to not have to ever throw into the group storage any type of boot swap for mage boots. But yeah, that primordial crystal was huge, and now I'm going to explain the reason why this was a much larger upgrade than you might think. Is that so? Originally, I'm like, well, it would be nice to have as many primordial boots as possible for doing Zami or Bandos, right? Obviously, it's just higher strength bonus, higher accuracy bonuses, and higher defense bonuses than Dragon Boots, right? But Dragon Boots is like whatever, it's +4 strength, Prims are +5. It's not that big of a difference. And there's a little bit of accuracies. I believe it's like +3 to your stab, slash, and crush bonus, as well as that boosted defense, the boosted like defensive stats that it gives for taking the melee minion damage or something in God Wars. But that's not too big of a deal. It's just it would have been weird because I did snipe a Black Tourmaline core from doing Grotesque Guardian combat achievements. So having two primordial boots already and the Black Tourmaline core, which meant that as soon as I get Bandos boots, I can literally make Guardian boots, which would be an insane best in slot tank boot for tanking the rest of God Wars encounters or any other boss where you would want tanky gear. So I'm like, oh, well, I'll still have like one account has to have like dragon boots because two would wear the primordials and one would wear the guardian boots once I upgrade them. So I would put the guardian boots on my tank, and then my DPSers would have two primordials and one dragon boots. But that's why I was just so satisfied with getting that last primordial drop, was that now I have the full best in slot kit effectively, that my tank can wear guardian boots once I make them, and now I have three primordial boots, so all three of my attackers will be basically maxed out in terms of the boots. And I have three berserker rings and one suffering, so my tank is going to have the suffering, which imbued gives plus 20 to all defense stats and some prayer. So as the tank, I'm going to be having guardian boots and a ring of suffering, just to have that maximum defensive bonuses and capability for like Bandos' ranged attacks, as well as Zammy minions and whatnot. And then my three attackers will all be rocking Primordial Boots and Berserker Ring Eye for just maximum DPS, knowing that they're not going to be tanking the boss at all. They're just going to be eating a little bit of chip damage from some of the minions, which isn't too big of a deal. So typically you wouldn't want to bring a Suffering, even if I had like multiple duplicate Sufferings. I would probably still want the Berserker Ring because plus 8 strength bonus is pretty massive, and when those accounts are just the attackers on the boss, they're not actually tanking the boss. They can just pray range, so the boss never does any damage to them. It's just, like I said, a little bit of chip damage from the minions. So typically, in order to alleviate the pressure from my tank tanking the boss, as well as getting chipped by minions on the side, you want your attacking accounts, whether you're teaming up with friends, if you're like main accounts and you're doing bandos for money, or you're an Iron Man in a group, doing bandos where you have a tank. Typically, your tank will want you to have a Berserker Ring and max strength bonuses and whatnot, just because that's just better for the DPS on the boss to bring it down quick, so that the tank is no longer under that duress. Because, like, for example, the tank at Bandos, you have to pray melee because his melee punches hit up to 60s, and that's just instantly going to delete your health in one or two hits. So you definitely have to pray melee, but he can choose to range, and whenever he chooses to do his range attack, you can't really react. It's not like you can just switch to pray range. It's already calculated. So the way it works is you have to pray melee, and then whenever he does range randomly, you're just going to be susceptible to tanking his ranged max hit, which hits, between, I believe, about 15 to 35 roughly. It can hit like it hits like 20s minimum. It's a unique damage roll. It still has an accuracy to where it can miss or not. So it would either hit a 0 or land successfully. If it does land successfully, then what happens is there's actually like a minimum damage roll. It's not like a normal attack that you're used to seeing. Normally, when you attack any monster, you roll between 1 to your max hit if it's an accurate roll. But in Bando's instance, there's actually like a minimum damage roll, and I believe it's about half of what his max is for the attack. So since he maxes 35s, I think it's about 17 is like the lowest you can get hit if he accurately hits you with that ranged projectile. Now your attackers, since they're not tanking the boss, can just pray range because they don't need to protect melee, having not being not tanking the boss, not being able to get punched by him, but your tank definitely will. So whenever he accurately hits, you're going to tank a full food worth of hit, worth of damage, or a lot more. Obviously, hitting like 30, 35 in that upper range, that's multiple brew doses right away. So um, yeah, definitely the tank will be under a lot of duress. So just having these extra little best in slot gear upgrades, like sniping that third primordial boot, it's pretty massive. I'm definitely very glad to have gotten that, because especially the way that it occurred was just, I'm literally out of supplies. I already crossed over 150. I was at like 155-ish. I was just finishing the trip. After that trip, regardless of what happened, I was going to be done with Serb because I had completed all 6 out of 6 combat achievements for him. And I just, staying around for that extra little primordial upgrade for to have 3 primordial boots instead of 2 wasn't gonna be worth it for me. It's just that I happened to land on it, so I'm really happy to have gotten that. But yeah, that's just kind of one of the interesting things that I've now noticed that I'm going to be able to utilize is that Guardian Boots and Suffering combo for my tank, and then having 3 sets of Prims and Berserkering Eye for DPSing both Sammy and Bando's God Wars bosses. So alongside that, I didn't do any more raids or anything. I've just been working on finishing maxing my combat stats with Slayer. So, 94 here, almost 95 attack. This is the last stat, is my attack stat. I already got 99 defense, so each account now has 99 strength and 99 defense. And I've been rocking, the defense cape trimmed with a berserker ring, defense cape trimmed, berserker ring. So I have that sort of maximum strength bonus prayer gear as well as that ring of life. Actually, all 4 of my accounts are wearing the defense cape right now. That's just how I roll now. Like, I would either be wearing a ring of life or the defense cape in the instance where I accidentally go AFK. And uh, just a small example, right? Doing an herb run, right? An herb run you might think is completely safe. There's actually one patch where there's an aggressive monster, and that's a vampire in the Mauritania patch. It's not always there, but maybe 1 out of like 5 runs you do, somebody will have, accidentally or intentionally, whatever. They typically tend to wander north after they've been spawned by people doing clues in that area. And if they wander north towards the patch, they would just start smacking people doing the farm run. Now, typically on a farm run, you're gonna wear like your graceful, or right now I'm wearing prospector because I was doing some mining. Whatever, you're wearing your skilling outfit, you have no stats and you have no weapon. I'm wearing a Drayman staff. So literally, even with auto retaliate, it would be a sketchy little encounter to have like 1 or 2 vampires trickle by. And I'm rocking that 25-minute logout timer plugin just because it helps me stay logged in longer whenever I actually am using the accounts. And I just have gotten used to it. So accidentally, oh, I gotta go AFK real quick, and I was in the middle of a farm run. If I ever happen to be at that patch or anything else that I haven't yet really even understood as being a threat, just nice to wear like a defense cape or a ring of life effect. Just save you in that instance, and it's like a guaranteed save too. For example, the Vyres here. The Vyres can hit like 16s, right? So they can bypass the Ring of Life effect. But like say that Vampire or a lot of Slayer monsters like Dagonoths or maybe even like uh, Fire Giants and Bloodvelds and Greater Demons don't even have that high of a max hit over the threshold. But anything that can hit only at maximum 9, which vampires definitely can't hit 10s, I don't think. It's literally 100% safe to wear a Ring of Life, because if you're at 10 HP, where you're just outside of the Ring of Life threshold to tell you out, then any of its max hits, 1 through 9, would put you to at most 1 HP minimum, and you would be saved by the Ring of Life effect. Whereas if you get put to like 10 or 11 HP and you're doing Hellhounds, for example, Hellhounds actually have a max hit of like 11 or 12. So there is a rare instance in which you could be hit to exactly like 10 through 12 HP and then just maxed out on by another big 10 or 12. And then actually it just bypasses that threshold where the Ring of Life tells you out, and you just get hit from like 10 to 0 directly, and you will still die. So the Ring of Life, it's never a perfect save if you get overkill hit from above the threshold down to 0. But on any monster that has a max hit of 9, it's not possible for them to do this. Therefore, it is just guaranteed safety. So yeah, that's typically why I just wear the defense cape, even if I'm skilling. It's either that, or if I need a cape on specifically, like the Arctic cloak for teleports or something, the farming cape for farming, then I'll try to wear like a ring of life. But I'm not too worried. I do know that the only dangerous place is Mauritania patch with that vampire, and there's yeah, you could argue, oh, even with a Draymond staff, I'm max combat, I would just bash him out. I'm doing a lot of bossing here and there. I'm doing a lot of raiding here and there, so I don't always have auto retaliate on, and I'm not gonna be like checking that every time I go and do like an herb run. So in the instance where I had auto retail, oh, right there. Look, one of these accounts has it on, one doesn't. I don't know why this one has it on and this one doesn't. It might have been all the way back since I did a raid. I just haven't turned it back on. Maybe it was for Esporia. I don't know, but not even have auto retaliate on just means I would be susceptible to the vampire just swiping me down endlessly. And yeah, I would definitely auto retaliate and kill the vampire before it killed me. But when you have auto retaliate off accidentally, the cape's just a safety net. So, but yeah, other than that, looking at the combat achievements, so Jagex just came out with an increase to the thresholds of combat achievements. So what this means is all of the tiers that they've added a combat achievement to. So I mean, for Scurious and Desert Treasure 2, they've added basically some of everything, right? Scurious has like a lot of easy and medium combat achievements, and the Desert Treasure 2 bosses have like at lowest they have like hard or elite tier, which would be like the 3 and 4 pointers, and then they have a lot of 5 and 6 pointers for the master and grandmaster achievements. Basically, whenever they come out with a new combat achievement, no matter what tier it is, it will always increase the point threshold of that tier as well as the other ones around it. So basically, for example, even if Jagex comes out with Scurious Boss, which they did, and they only came out with Scurious Combat achievements, which would be easy or medium, that's going to increase the Grandmaster threshold as well. That's going to increase the Master threshold. That's going to increase the Elite and the Hard and the Medium and the Easy for all of those easy combat achievements. But for Desert Treasure 2, if all the Desert Treasure 2 bosses have is Elite or higher, so the 4, 5, or 6 pointers, which would be for the Elite, Master, and Grandmaster, respectively, then you actually don't see any effect on the lower tiers. So they don't affect ones below them, but they do affect ones above them, and that's for the tier of reward unlocks. So this is because in order to get Grandmaster, you have to have Master. And so to have Master, you have to have the Elite, and so forth, all the way down. So you have to have all of these tiers unlocked all the way down. It's just like achievement diaries. You have to have the easy, medium, and hard done to get the Elite done. But whenever they come out with Desert Treasure 2 ones, you don't have to have the higher ones to get to the lower ones. That's how it's always worked. So I utilize points from the Elite or Master tier. So there are some combat achievements I have completed that are Elite or Master. Let me actually take a look here. Yeah, so I have 6 Master tasks and 33 Elite, even though I don't have that tier, any of those tiers done. I have a lot of points from the Elite and a lot of points from the Master tasks. Those contribute based on the point system to my tier of combat achievements that I currently have, which is the hard tier. So, but yeah, with Jagex releasing these combat achievements, it basically ups the ante, so to speak, for everyone in any tier, basically, because I literally had the hard tier unlocked. And when they came out with Scurious, this is going to add easy, medium, and hard, which increases the threshold for those easy, medium, and hard tiers to be unlocked. So what I currently had points-wise was no longer suffice to reach me to that tier of unlocks that I wanted. I would think I was like 30 or something points off of gaining the hard back. So basically, I would open the combat achievements and it would say, hey, 20 points to the next unlock. That would be for my hard tier. So I would go and I'd look at like Obor and Bryophyta and I'd say, okay, I can get exactly 20 points doing these specific tasks. So I did, and I got exactly the points for the hard tier. But now with Jagex coming out with new ones, now that threshold has been increased, so I actually having the exact points for it now means that I'm just shy based on whatever they increased it by. So I had to go back around to some bosses. Um, most of that came from raids. It came from Tombs of Masket, and I had some backup plans. I, run into the Woody, and I did some crazy archaeologist, which has a couple easy ones. There's the deranged archaeologist, if you haven't done it yet, and that's in Fossil Island, so not even in the Woody. There's a few that you can do with him. There's also some easy Theater of Blood entry mode ones with Maiden and Bloat. There's a few that you can do with just those first two rooms. So even if you don't want to do the whole raid, if you just learn how to do like the Maiden room and Bloat room only, and then you can resign after for TOB entry mode, you can easily do that solo with just some scuffed gear and obtain some easy combat achievement points for those two, and regain that threshold to the hard tier because you actually lose your rewards. You lose the ability of having that reduced God Wars kill count as well as the Gombal's Hill 3. So you have to regain those points back, and then you're back at the hard tier. And that's kind of what I had to do because I was a little bit shy, having gotten exactly sort of the points for the hard tier threshold and then stopping Slayer because I was like, well, I got the hard tier, now I have the unlocks. I thought that would be like a permanent thing, but now I'm realizing whenever Jagex comes out with these new bossing updates, that's gonna keep raising that, threshold for me, making me have to consistently go back for it. So, yeah, I'm not too worried about that in the future. There won't be too many bosses coming out. I think Varlamore with the Colosseum, and there might be like a little weird boss here and there. There will definitely be combat achievements for the Colosseum, but I don't know if there's gonna be any other like real bosses that Varlamore comes out with. So when push comes to shove and Varlamore does release, they won't have combat achievements yet. But I expect like a month or two after or something, or a few months later, even they'll come out with some Colosseum combat achievements, which again will increase the threshold for my hard tier again, and I'll have to regain it. But with doing things like giant keys for Obor, Bryophyta, some of the really niche bosses like the archaeologist dudes around the game, there are ways for me to get it as well as raids. I could do a solo chambers too. I'll definitely find my way. And there's some bosses that I haven't done fully, like Abyssal Sire. I know I haven't done Abyssal Sire too much. That was just one of the bosses I kind of forgot to do on one of these accounts. And there's some easy combat achievements there, so. But other than that, yeah, like for the most part, I have like Thermi, Calphite Queen, um, Kraken. Like I literally have all the combat achievements from those bosses. So as they keep releasing more and more, I will have to venture out and do some of them to upkeep the hard tier that I currently have. But yeah, I think Scurious would also be another easy one, especially because you don't need to get like a key of some sort to enter the room. You can just walk in and kill Scurious. So I would literally just go do a couple of the Scurious combat achievements. I think one of them is an annoying one where it says you have to have a bone weapon. So there's two. There's one that says you have to kill all of his little rat summons within 3 seconds of one another, and there's 6 of them, which means you have to literally be tick perfect with the bone weapon, and the bone weapons are the only weapons where there's no attack delay. So you can just you can tick perfect one tick after the next, attack, attack, attack for all 6 in a row and get that combat achievement. So it's not difficult, but you do need a Scurious Spine to do that, or a Din's Bulwark. Maybe even a Venator Bow would work, but Din's Bulwark also works because it specs them all in an AoE. So I don't have a Din's Bulwark, and I don't have the Spine because I've never done the boss. So I would have to slug out KC to get a Spine, which is kind of a rare drop. It would take like dozens of Casey. I don't want to have to do that, so I'd probably not do that combat achievement as well as the high kill count ones or any ones that say. I think there's one that just says to kill him with a bone weapon from his spine um, upgrade. So those ones that require the spine, I probably won't be able to do, which is actually quite a few of them. But and it's because it's not tradable. So if this were tradable, like if the weapon or the spine were tradable, then what I could do is I could just grind out the KC on one, get the spine, make the weapon, use it for the combat achievements, and then share it with the other 3 accounts. But because it's not tradable, I'm not going to be able to do that. I would have to literally grind the KC on each individual character to get a spine individually for each one, and that's just gonna, yeah, I don't really feel like grinding Scurious. So only if I truly need to would I go back to him for combat achievements. So yeah, in working with combat achievements and such, like Mole was pretty easy, Serachnus was pretty easy. There's some Hespori ones. Oh, Zulra's another big one. So I think with Zulra, I've only ever done Zulra on the one account because that's the only one that I got the diary done. It just happened to be my first account that achieved 93 Slayer and onward. So it was my highest account. I had the highest mage level from barraging Necrils and such. And it just made the most sense to then do the diary for the free revive every day on that account and then grind it. So I did 1730 Zulra on just that one account. Basically got every single combat achievement from Zulra. There might be like 1 or 2 I still didn't do, but those points were definitely nice, and there's definitely some kill count ones there. Whether it's like 50 or 100, I don't know exactly, but I could easily go do, because I kind of like doing Zulra, I could easily go do the diary, the Elite Western diary, on the other 3 accounts that haven't touched Zulra yet, and then that would give me a free, safe way to just go and do some good combat achievements for Zulra, because Zulra is a high level boss and does a lot of damage, but it being safe means that it's going to be some pretty free points for combat achievements, because his combat achievements will all be like hard tier or higher. So I'm going to be getting 3, 4s, and 5 points, 5 pointers from each of those. But it being free means that that's a huge income, source of points there for the combat achievements. Whereas like Scurious, Obor, or Bryophyta, yeah, sure, they're really easy, but they're at best a 2-pointer. So it takes a lot more of them, and there's you can't get as many total. So Zulra's kind of a backup plan. Theater of Blood entry mode's a backup plan. If I truly need, I can look into some more of the TOA ones. There's some TOA kill count combat achievements. There's kill count combat achievements for TOA for entry and normal ones. So I could just do some 150s to get the TOA combat achievement kill count requirements for the normal raids, which is 150 or higher. And this would also get me the entry mode ones, because the entry mode TOA kill count achievements say that like you have to do it on entry or higher. So if I'm doing it on just normal raids, like level 150 or higher, then it would unlock both of those CAs for me at once. So there's some backups, and if I really needed, I could send like a Chambers of Xeric. Just doing one Chambers of Xeric would get me a handful of points, because I know there's like complete one, and there's also one that says complete one without dying. And well, I'm a hardcore, so I'm going to be going in it, and the only way I'm gonna do it is without dying. So that's kind of guaranteed. I'll get it's called like Undying Raider. It's complete a Chambers of Xeric without dying once. So that one will be free, and any low kill count ones I could get, and any little cute ones with like I don't know, kill Vaza with him only visiting a crystal once. Like I don't know if there's a chance that I could just Rambo with like some ruby bolts or something, but I don't know. We'll figure it out. But yeah, so that's sort of the spiel on what I've had to deal with regaining combat achievements and what I will constantly have to deal with so long as I still need to do God Wars. So maybe with this upcoming Varlamore update, if I haven't fully completed Zamian Bandos, actually all the God Wars, then I will need to go back for some of these CAs. So, but yeah. Anyway, besides that, there was actually a funny instance where I was doing mole. So I'm so used to wearing the defense cape. So I go into mole, and I want to Darok him because there's Daroks. There's a Darok. It doesn't require Daroks, but that's the best weapon I have to hit 90s or higher. You have to four-shot him. There's a combat achievement to kill the giant mole in 4 damaging hits or less. So you can hit zeros and they don't count. But whenever you hit a damage splat, it has to kill him in 4 damage splats that actually accurately hit, which means you have to hit like above 60s to even make that possible with his health. He's about 200 something health. So with Darok down to 1 HP, rock kicking myself and praying melee, there's no risk, and I can easily 4-shot him because my max hit was like a 90. So I got that combat achievement easily, but I went in and I'm literally about to start killing Mole, and I start rock kicking myself down, and literally I rock kicked myself into like 9 HP or less, and then I got tellied out, and I'm just thinking like, but I know I have a berserker ring on, and that's when I realized that my cape was the defense cape, which naturally will teleport me out like the Ring of Life. So I literally rock caked myself um, out with the Ring of Life defense cape proc. A little bit of a funny moment there. And it was kind of funny because I literally wanted to use the defense cape as like a safety net in case anything would go wrong, but not realizing that my own self-inflicted damage would proc it. That was just kind of like a little wake-up moment. But yeah. So that happened. Other than that, working on just the slight gains, stacking points galore is the name of the game here. I think I have like 8,000 points on one of these accounts that's finished Slayer, and I have about 6 to 7,000 on the other account that's finished Slayer. One of them just ended up being a little bit more efficient. I think that was the second one that I actually accomplished 99 on. What I did was I just got better at efficiently completing every task, even though they weren't all super good. And on big streaks, I would make sure to do Konar. So for like 250 and 500 streaks, as well as any 100 streak, I made sure to go and do Konar, which does give you extra points. And I got probably pretty lucky to where I didn't have to skip any terrible tasks from her. So that was just all pure profit. I think I recently just did a 500 streak at her, and I caught like some ridiculous amount of points. It was like at least 600. I think it was like 600 and something points. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I think it was like a 25x. So yeah, pretty massive there. It might have even been a 35. I think it was a 35x. Let me just pull up the calculator here real quick. You get 18 points per, and I think it was a 35x. Yeah, I got 630 points for doing a Konar. Whereas with Duradel, that would be 15 times 35, which is 525. So 105 extra points for doing Konar on those 500 streaks, or like the 20. You would still get like a 25x for the 250 streak, which is still a pretty big difference. It would still be probably about 70 extra points, 75 extra points. So yeah, 75 or let's say 105 extra points for that. I could get now from Durdo. I still skip tasks. Keep that in mind. I will still get like Zygamites or like Skeletal Wyverns where I'll skip because those are just terrible tasks to do. They have just terrible drops and bad stats. Like they have really high defense, the Wyverns, so it's really bad Slayer XP. So Durdo isn't like a perfect master, although he is ideal because if I were to land on Necreal,
that's guaranteed insanely nice task. But if I get Necreel from Konar, she could assign them in a a garbage location like the Prifddinas Elven Lands dungeon, the Ireworth dungeon or whatever, and that would force me to have to melee the really big guys, and that's just a nightmare of a task. It would be really long and annoying, and you can't choose what to do for each task like you can Duradel. So yeah, with Konar you might get some tasks where you have to skip just because the location makes it unbearable. But in general, the way I view it is like you might have to skip one more task than normal doing Konar instead of Duradel. So your point deficit or the point difference there needs to be worth that 30-point extra that you're probably going to spend skipping. Risking one task at Konar. So, but it being 105 points extra for that massive streak just means that that was well worth it. Because even if I had to skip like two or more tasks, because Konar just gave me some pretty bad and poor location tasks, then it still would have been a profit on points. So yeah, doing that, and I didn't have too bad of luck with Konar on my streak tasks. I would just send it and get some decent tasks. It was typically like Dagannoth in like the lighthouse, or I've gotten Dagannoth in Jorgamon's prison. So there's a couple places with Dagannoths, and normally you'll do it in the catacombs, but she kept assigning me Dagannoths in other locations, which is still fine because they're still like the same monster. Um, you just don't get the prayer restore back from bone crushing all the bones, but they're pretty weak, so I just tank them out and just AFK. They all aggro to you, and then 30 minutes later the task's done. So definitely had some decent Konar RNG there, and yeah, working the slay point totals up because I'm gonna want to just I'm not gonna want to dabble too much on a ton of like annoying Slayer tasks. Like if I get something really juicy like Necreel, then I'll probably do it, even though I'll already be 99. And what I'm referring to here is after I finish 99 Slayer on all four accounts, to where I'm just shooting for Greater Demon tasks for Zami and Aviancies for Arma. I'm gonna be finishing the task not having completed the items I want. There's almost no chance that I complete Zami and Arma within one task. So I'm gonna have to get probably more tasks, probably 3 to 4 times at least. I'm thinking to get like a full Armadil set, and then potentially I might go for a Zamorak Godsword from Zami, because with Zami, the Zami Godsword, I can actually use it to land a nice spec onto Zilly in the Sarah God Wars boss room. So this actually freezes her in place, and it's much more accurate than trying to land Ice Barrage or any other type of freeze magic spell, because she has an insanely high magic level, which makes her highly resilient to magic attacks. So your kind of only option if you do want to actually freeze her in place is to Zami God Wars, Zami God Sword spec her. And it's fairly accurate. God Swords all have an extremely high slash bonus. So their spec, with Piety and Potted, it's typically very accurate. And, melee is one of the methods used to kill Zilly, where everybody just attacks her with Varix, which can proc through her defense. And even if it doesn't proc through her defense, you still can just hit naturally. So typically in a team of like 3 people, you'll have one person Zami God Wars spec her. I keep saying Zami God Wars, Zami God Sword spec her, ZGS, and she'll just stay frozen in the center of the room. So everybody that she's not targeting can just smack her with melee or ranged bolt her. And then when she starts switching targets and then becomes unfrozen, hopefully she's just dead by then, because it does just become a super, like, crazy like little chicken fest where everyone's just running away from her because she does so much melee DPS. If you ever let her reach you, Zilly is just one of those scary bosses where she attacks with melee literally every 2 game ticks. It's completely it's completely absurd how they just made her that strong in melee form. Um, that's why you always have to just run around the room and kite her. She's just notorious for being one of the most vicious melee distance bosses. So yeah, staying at Zami for a god sword and being able to ZGS spec freeze Zilly so that I can just like range bolt her and not have to worry too much about like kiting constantly. That could be a good strategy, as well as just letting the thralls go ham on her while she's frozen. So one of the things I kind of noticed, and I've noticed this because I've done Zilly, I've done Sarah solo on um, different Ironman accounts in the past. Thralls, yes, they're very good. They are going to always hit through defense, and for any God Wars where they have high defense, that's an insanely good characteristic to have, is just having that defense bypass mechanism. However, when you're running the boss around, the thrall actually has an attack range. So, for example, you summon the mage or the ranged ones because the melee one would literally have to be within melee distance. So you would always summon like the major ranged thrall. They actually don't have like an infinite attack range, and it was kind of annoying because I noticed those, and I don't know if this is just like poor coding or just terrible quality of life, but the way it works is the thrall actually gets out distanced by Zilliana in Sarah God Wars. With you running around the room through each corner, you constantly are kiting her. But what the problem is once she starts dragging your thrall, meaning she steps too far away from the thrall, because the thrall typically will never move if it's in attack range. So it will just stay there and attack her until she gets dragged away from the thrall far enough. What I noticed was happening is the thrall actually just stops being able to chase properly. It will still walk towards her, but it can't actually catch up because it lets itself get like perfectly one tile out of distance before it starts chasing, and then since it's one tile out of its attack range, it literally won't attack while it's chasing her until she either stops moving away from it or the thrall catches up because she moved like a different perpendicular direction. But yeah, it's a very weird phenomenon that I noticed, and this is not normal to like a typical RuneScape character. Your character does not have this flaw because obviously that would have been something pretty massive that the devs would have picked up long ago and fixed and made work properly. To where if you're walking and chasing something that's also walking away from you, you at least keep up with it and can attack whenever possible. But the thralls are definitely coded terribly. This game is notorious for not having the best coding. People call it the spaghetti code for a reason. And I have noticed this is a serious flaw with the thralls. And Jagex obviously is just too terrible at understanding their own video game in the way that I do. So like they will literally never notice this, and it'll never get fixed. So, end of the day, kiting Zilly around the room, even if I'm using a thrall on all of my accounts, when it starts dragging the thrall and it becomes too far away from it, these thralls will literally just stop attacking until they reach her again, which would be all the way to the far wall of the room. So yeah, I'm gonna lose a ton of thrall DPS because of this sort of bug. It's not definitely not intentional. I wouldn't call it a bug, but it's definitely not intentional. And ends up meaning that the thrall just doesn't attack the boss like more than half of the duration that it's in there. It just constantly has to walk towards her to get back into attack range, and just never sort of does that because you're constantly kiting her away from the where the thrall sort of sits in the middle of the room. So I'm going to be losing a lot of thrall DPS because of this if I just kite her around on all 4 accounts with crossbows. However, I might want to get this Zami God Wars, the Zami God Sword spec landed, because if I can freeze her in the center of the room, then all the thralls will sort of get to go ham because they'll just stay in range and just keep attacking. So I know it's a very minimalistic thing right there, but this might be one of the strategies that I do for Zilly. And it might end up being worth it because I'll probably be bringing Guthans anyway in there. So having Guthans, I'll want to bring super combat pots um, as well, just to have some amount of strength and attack boost for when I switch to Guthans, and then try to heal up on the minions. I will want some sort of buff so that I'm not just base stat level. Even if I let this stat drain all the way from 118 down back to 99 before I repot, just having some strength boost means that those Guthans heals will just hit a lot harder, and I'll heal a lot more and more quickly before like the minion gets taken out. And yeah, just killing the minions quicker, since I will be Guthaning them. It's going to be important to get them cleared out quick. That way I can then start looting food, supply drops that they drop, pick up all the bones, and then properly bones to peach them. Might need to trade different accounts that are lower that didn't get the minion kills. Trade them the bones so that account can bone to peach tab, and then eat the peaches to heal back up. There's going to be a lot of scrambling going on, and the ZGS spec might just make Zilly a little bit cleaner on my end. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the plans there. And then for Armadil, the drop rates are much higher for like the armor pieces than like the Zami spear is at Zami. So yeah, I'll be going for a Zami God Sword from Zami, um, from the Krill boss. But just getting spears is a lot more likely to occur. That's a very common drop. It's only 1 in 128. So I'll typically get a spear very quickly, probably within my first task, to be fair. So I'm not worried about having too many Slayer points to skip through those Greater Demon tasks, but Aviances definitely will require multiple tasks. And for Zami, if I do seek out this God Sword for the hilt, then I would need obviously an equal amount sort of to Armadil, because those drop rates are pretty nuts for the hilt and the Armadil armor pieces. Um, the Armadil hilt's pretty useless, so I won't really care if I ever get that. It might be a decent spec weapon considering I don't have like claws, but typically if it's ever like some DPS type of race, typically the Crystal Halley beats everything in terms of like overall damage and accuracy, and then DDS just overwhelms even like a God Sword spec if the monster has like low defense. So, but yeah, just stacking Slayer points is going to only be helpful. My initial plans were to eventually transition my block list to a Konar oriented block list. So that would be removing certain ones, such as, I believe, spiritual creatures and Sukwas are the two that come to mind. So yeah, basically what you can do is, for Duradel, you want to block Sukwas and spiritual creatures because they're pretty terrible tasks. And Duradel assigns them at a high weight, so they're one of those ones where you are either going to get them a ton and have to do them, or block them. Definitely spiritual creatures because they're awful. I mean, God Wars, that area is just terrible to deal with. You need like multiple forms of God protection from the multiple sort of, you know, uh, minions and whatnot that each God alignment has there. You know, to do like spiritual creatures for the Sarah mages or whatever, you would need Sarah protection as well as Zami, and then there's still like Aviances that will come like randomly attack you. So yeah, even having like an Armadil piece wouldn't be a bad idea, but it's just super annoying and something that I do not want to partake in, and nor do I recommend it for anyone. But Then also there is Suklas, which also just have absolutely no drops. They have a bit of defense, so they're really annoying to kill. And in general, they're just terrible XP. They're a terrible task. They don't do anything. You can still do them because if you're a main account, you can cannon them. So some people will like to do that. But I always, if I'm an Iron Man, I'm always blocking spiritual creatures and then deciding whether or not I want to just do Suklas or I would make them a block. Um, but Konar, those are two tasks where Konar does not ever assign Suklas, and nor does she ever assign spiritual creatures. So, but for the other blocks that you might have, so some people will block Hellhounds or Black Demons. 95 attack. They'll block like Hellhounds, Black Demons. You might block like Greater Demons, Fire Giants, Calphite. Konar does assign all of those. So when you switch over your blocks to be Konar oriented rather than for Duradel specifically, there's a few changes that you're going to make. So if I were to switch to Konar, I would switch up a couple of those blocks that I have and those two that I mentioned. And then with Konar, you get Brimstone Keys, which is a nice little, bunch of loot that you'll get. Once you get Brimstone Keys, you can loot from her chest right nearby Konar, and you get some decent loot. You can get like 500 or something steel bars. You get like coal, iron ore for making steel bars into cannonballs. You also get a lot of raw fish like sharks, sea turtles, or whatever. Maybe even raw manta rays. Some other high tier supplies like rune stacks, and then you also get like just a ton of GP from like alkables. And just raw GP in general. There's also seeds and stuff. You can look up the table if you want for brimstone keys, but in general, it's pretty lucrative. Like they're definitely worth using and getting. The problem is you have to bear through Konar. So typically, Konar is just terrible for doing Slayer because you're unable to choose where you do certain barrage tasks like Necrials and Dust Devils. So in the instance where you want to barrage Necrials, you need to be doing Duradel because you have to do them in the catacombs to barrage them. And then just other tasks where it's annoying, like Fire Giants in the Waterfall dungeon that Konar can give. She can also assign Metal Dragons in the Brimstone dungeon. She also has access to Bronze Dragons naturally. So not only you have to deal with skipping Iron and Steel Dragons like Duradel, but you also have to skip her Bronze Dragon tasks that she assigns. And just a bunch of other annoying things like Calphites. Calphite in the Calphite layer instead of the Calphite only Slayer dungeon might be a little bit different. But actually, typically that one I just did the soldiers in that one little room. There's like a circular room, and they all kind of aggro to you. But in general, I think just not being able to choose freely to do Slayer in the catacombs is a huge hindrance on just your total XP that you're getting, as well as the quality of life. For example, Bone Crusher, restoring prayer, getting totem drops and ancient shards in the catacombs, as well as any superior you get in the catacombs has a guaranteed totem piece drop. So that's also just like guaranteed, 1/3 of a totem. So yeah, you kind of have to choose between Konar or getting a lot of like Skatizo totems. And typically, yeah, like I said, if you get Necrial anywhere else besides catacombs, then that's kind of annoying because you can't barrage them. She also will assign like jellies, and typically, like I don't do jellies, although they're probably decent XP in Slayer. It's just one of those things. They don't have any like good drops, so typically I don't like to do tasks that don't give me either good XP or loot, or at least some of both. So yeah, in transitioning to Konar with excess points, um, any advice I would give to somebody making this decision is to have at least 2,000 points already. And if you have 2,000 points, then you can officially unblock Suklas or spiritual creatures if you have them, and then block two of the other highest weight Konar tasks that you do not ever want to do. such as like metal dragons could be something uh, to choose from, or like hellhounds, black demons are also high weighted. Other things for Konar is like you can't ever do demonic gorillas because whenever she assigns black demons, they are never in that location where demonic gorillas are. She only assigns actual black demons, not demonic gorilla in the little experimental glows layer, gluffs, whatever you call that layer where the demonic gorillas are. Yeah, you can never get those from Konar specifically because she will assign black demons, like I said, but it'll never be that location because that location doesn't exist on her tables. So there's also a couple other things that you can't ever get from Konar. I thought it was Cerberus, but actually I think she does assign hellhounds in Taverley Dungeon. But there's definitely one other thing that you can't do from her. I just can't think of it on the top of my head, but it's just an inconvenience to do Konar. So yeah, if you're going to do it, have at least 2,000 Slayer points excess. That way you can block the appropriate tasks that you need to block in transitioning from Duradel, and then you also have enough points left over, like a couple thousand, to just skip. So you're going to need a lot of 30-point skips in reserve. So that's why I would recommend to have a few thousand points when transitioning, because you're going to get a lot of terrible tasks and you're not going to be able to block them all. And from what I found is you'll probably break even. Like you'll have to skip some here and there, but you get 18 points per task, and then you get good amounts for the multiplications on the streaks. But because you get so many more bad tasks from her than you do Duradel, you won't see yourself like supremely profiting points. You'll most likely go downwards in total points stored up. So starting with a couple thousand means that over time, if you do lose a little bit of points over like tens and dozens of tasks, then having started at like a few thousand points means that by the time you use 2,000 points worth of skips, you'll have at least earned like 1,500 points back from task streaks. So you'll still have a couple thousand points, and then hopefully you can kind of find like a nice middle ground where you can balance out doing all her tasks and get enough done. Oh, the other thing that you can't get from her is aviancies. She will not assign. Actually, no, she does assign aviancies in the God Wars dungeon. So I actually cannot think um, what task. Oh, it's Zami. It's Zami. I knew it was one of the God Wars. So she'll assign Bloodvelds in the God Wars dungeon, and she'll also assign aviancies in the God Wars dungeon. So there are monsters in the God Wars dungeon where she will assign, but there are no natural greater demons in the God Wars dungeon, similar to how there are actual monsters called aviancies in the God Wars dungeon that you can just kill. They drop like 4 addy bars. They have nothing to do with the actual Armado boss. She will assign monsters like that, but because there's literally no greater demons in God Wars, there's just Zami that counts as a greater demon. She doesn't assign greater demons because the monster doesn't actually exist. So she doesn't assign aviancies because the boss is considered an aviancy. She assigns aviancies literally because there are actual aviancies in God Wars. But Zami, there are no actual greater demons in the God Wars dungeon, so I believe it's Demonic Gorillas and Zami God Wars. You literally cannot get through Konar, and both of those are ones that you definitely want to be on task for. So it's just another reason why Konar is just slightly worse than Duradel. But over time, the Brimstone keys do add up, and they will get you some nice loot. So if you do have thousands of points, it would be worth transitioning over. Just having enough points to skip bad tasks, because what else are you going to use points on? If I just continue Duradel the way I am, I will only profit and go up in points. And having a few thousand, I have nothing to really spend them on. So yeah, I'll most likely be mass skipping a ton of points worth to get back-to-back God Wars tasks that I'm looking for. So I'm trying to match up all my Greater Demon and Aviancy tasks and not have to spend too much time in between. Pretty much what will happen is I'll be doing a Greater Demon task with Sammy on all 4 accounts. Whenever that task runs low, then I will have to get a new one, which means my next assignable task cannot be a back to back. That's how Slayer will always work, because you can't get something back to back unless you get like the 99 cape proc, which by the way I will be using because that's my goal, is to have the 99 cape as well, just a little bit more efficient on points if you are skipping for certain tasks. So I will have to get at least one first to then be eligible again for another Greater Demon task. So in doing that, if I get something like Necreals or Abyssal Demons, I might just want to do them because those are really, really good tasks for like Prayer and Slayer XP in general. And I'm okay with going like post 99 for a little bit of high scores. So I might have to spend some time to do actual Slayer so I don't like waste really, really good task rolls. But if I get like something like 200 gargoyles, that's just like a long drawn out task. Even though I like doing them, I'm gonna want to focus on just getting my God Wars tasks assigned and ready to roll, and then move on to the next account, get that one ready to roll as well, so that I can just do a ton of God Wars in short succession. So a lot of my points will go to skipping even some decent tasks so that I can just expedite this whole process and end up landing on simultaneous Greater Demon and Aviancy tasks. And yeah, over the course of doing this for Zami and Armadil, that's going to be a ton of task skipping and searching for those tasks, because I will need multiple sets of the task. You only get like 200-ish for them. You'll get like 200 Aviancies or Greater Demons total. So, I definitely will need more than one. The first one probably will not be enough to get the drops that I need. In fact, a couple might not even be enough. I might need like 4 to 5 or even potentially more tasks total. So, yeah, we'll see how the RNG lands on that one. But yeah, I'm going to be wrapping this video up now. That's sort of the plans as for finishing off Slayer, entering God Wars. As always, that's the upcoming plan. And I'm 95 attack, just hit that on this video. On this account is this other one here is almost 92-ish attack. So I will be just slugging out the rest of this 99 attack on these two, getting whatever prayer I can. But I'm pretty high prayer. I'm about 86 through 90 prayer on each account. So my prayer is definitely suffice. I'm not going to be grinding it to 99 like I did attack, strength, and defense. I think attack, strength, and defense are a lot more easily obtained than prayer. Prayer would just take way too long. So I will be going into God Wars fairly soon after hitting 99. After 99 attack, I'm literally going right in. I might finish out 99 Slayer, but I think by the time I get 99 attack, I will be 99 Slayer basically, because some of my tasks will be neck reels and such, to where I'm only gaining magic XP from them. So yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. That's gonna wrap it up for this video. Be sure to drop a comment if you like the video, and subscribe for more future content as we start getting into the nitty gritty bulk of PVM that is coming up shortly. So thank you again, and I will catch you on the next one.